Hi, and welcome back to this video series all about the top-down, center-out method for fitting a pair of pants. My name is Stacy. I am the Crooked Hem on Instagram as well as on my sewing blog, and today I want to talk about the top-down, center-out method, what it is, what it isn't, and then importantly, what are the main concepts that I think are critical for understanding how this method works and why it works. It's this understanding that I think allows us to be successful in fitting a pair of pants. We have to understand what are the mechanisms behind the method in order to make decisions about what to adjust in our patterns, how to adjust them, and ultimately get to that successful fit that we want. So let's get started. First, I want to talk about what the method is. Top-down, center-out is a new method for fitting pants that draws on slightly different principles for how to fit a 2D pattern to our 3D bodies. Traditional methods that have you read wrinkle charts and perform a series of body part specific adjustments to address those wrinkles in your toiles, those methods are based on really concepts in pattern drafting. And that's why those methods have you redrafting parts of the pattern in order to get the pants to fit you. Top-down, center-out is based in a different set of principles. It's based on an understanding of how pants patterns work, the engineering in a pair of pants, the physics of how a pair of pants is actually hanging on you and how the fabric is molding to your body. It's also based on an understanding of anatomy and movement and how a 2D flat pattern shape needs to wrap around your body in order to accommodate that movement. So what you'll be doing when you practice the top-down, center-out method is the first thing is to fit the waistband. This might seem a little counterintuitive, or at least somewhat trivial if you're used to traditional methods, because I know for me, the waistband was always an afterthought. In top-down, center-out, the waistband is the key. It is the foundation for a well-fitted pair of pants. So we fit the waistband first and just the waistband. Next, we choose our size in the pattern and we add extra fabric to the top of the pattern and all along the sides of the pattern. And we do this to give ourselves more room to make decisions and to try things out as we are fitting the toile on ourselves later. Once we've traced our pattern, including that extra fabric, we then cut out our toile and we assemble a one-legged toile. So it's a waistband and just one pant leg. And we do this because a one-legged toile allows us to evaluate all of the major seams in that garment, including the crotch seam. We can see how much ease is in that crotch seam, how it's hanging on our bodies, much easier if it's just a one-legged pair of pants. Next, the fitting. So we fit the pants on our bodies. We do adjustments in real time on our 3D bodies by adding or removing or adjusting the toile fabric as it hangs on us. And this is really the key for the entire fitting process in top-down, center-out. There's no going back and forth between the flat pattern and making new toiles. We only use one toile because we've given ourselves a little bit extra play with so we can try things. And if it doesn't work, we just unpin and start again. Once we've got the toile where we're happy, we then take the adjustments we've made to that toile, we transfer them back to the flat pattern, and then we're ready to cut out our final garment and assemble it. The other thing that I think is important to know about what the method is that it is body neutral. So importantly, top-down, center-out does not force us to make body part specific adjustments. So we are not assessing our bodies and finding flaws with our bodies and how the pants pattern may or may not interact with those body parts. We are not comparing our bodies to some standardized ideal. And I think for me, critically, this is worth trying the method just based on that alone. It leaves me with a much more positive outlook about myself and a much more positive outlook about the fitting process when I don't have to be forced to identify what is problematic about my body. I want to take a moment and talk about what the top-down, center-out method is not, what it isn't, because I think that is as important as what it is. The top-down, center-out method is not prescriptive, which means it's not ever going to tell you what to do if you have a specific fit issue in your toile. So unlike traditional fit methods that have wrinkle charts and diagrams saying, if you have wrinkles here, do this specific adjustment. If you have wrinkles over there, do this other adjustment. Instead, the top-down, center-out method gives us a workflow. There's a specific order of things to look at and assess in your one-legged toile as you're fitting. And if you follow that workflow, then you are able to address fitting issues without doing these major redrafts. So that's really what the top-down, center-out method is all about. It's that workflow. It's not magic. These elements, a lot of the different pieces that go into that workflow have pre-existed the top-down, center-out method, but the method brings them all together and gives you that order. So it's really crucial to follow that specific order of operations. And I'll talk about what that order of operations is next. Let's dive into the key concepts that I think are the most important for understanding how and why the top-down, center-out method actually works. The first concept is this idea that the waistband is the foundation or the keystone to a really successful fit on a pair of pants. So let's say this is my waistband. I can put this waistband anywhere I want along my torso. I can put it up near my rib cage, down near my hips, or at my natural waist. Doesn't really matter. Top-down, center-out says that the most important thing about the waistband is that it's stable, is that it fits me wherever I put it on my body, and it doesn't move very much throughout the day as I'm moving around. So it's not gonna migrate up or down wherever I put it. And that's the top in top-down, center-out. The waistband is the top of the garment, and it's what we fit first. Now, hanging from the waistband is the crotch seam. And you can imagine if my waistband isn't stable, if it's gonna migrate up or if it's gonna migrate down, that's gonna change the amount of ease I have in my crotch seam. It's either gonna remove ease if the waistband's moving up, or it's gonna add ease if the waistband's moving down. And that is absolutely going to affect the fit of your pants. So this is the first thing that we look for when we're fitting. We start at the top with the waistband, and then we work down. We look at that crotch seam and we evaluate how much ease there is, what's the length, what's the crotch depth. Are the proportions of this seam fitting to our bodies in the way that we want? And if we need to lengthen or shorten this crotch seam, then we do so at the point where the seam meets the waistband at the center front and the center back. We can either remove length, we can add length to both front and back, or we can just add or remove length at either end of the seam. Now, attached to the crotch seam, we have the inseam. So at the same time we're evaluating the ease in the crotch seam, we can also evaluate the height of the inseam. And again, the height of the inseam is determined by where the waistband is. So if we have a stable waistband, then we have a stable height to our inseam, which obviously affects the fit. Now, you can probably tell where this is going, but the next major seam that we evaluate is the side seam. So once we have the top and the center of the pant fitted the way we want, we work our way out and we fit the side seam of the pants. Now, similarly to the crotch and inseam, we can adjust the side seam simply by adding or removing fabric to it. If we need to lower the side seam or raise the side seam to change the angle of the leg and the distribution of fabric in the leg, we can do that easily. I've certainly had the experience where when I put on my toile, the grain line of the pant leg is not straight on my body. So I can manipulate the height of either the side seam or of the inseam to be able to correct for that on my body. We can also either move this side seam forward or back by adding a little bit of fabric or removing fabric from the front and the back of the pant. And of course, we can control the circumference of the pant by adding or removing from both front and back at the side seam. So we can pin out fabric or we can add fabric here. So everything that's happening in this pair of pants, all of these major seams, they're all hanging from the waistband, and we can control a lot about how these seams are behaving on our bodies by adding or removing length to each of these seams where it meets the waistband. So in that way, changes at the waistband and how the pants meet the waistband, those changes can cascade down and affect not just that area up to the waistband, but they can affect the entire pant leg. And that's something that really surprised me when I saw it on some of my toiles. So that's the reason why the waistband is so critical for top down, center out. It holds all of these major seams, and by changing how these seams interact with the waistband, we can really change a lot about the entire garment. There's also a second reason why the waistband is so important. It holds all of these major seams, but it also holds and positions some of the shaping elements in our pant patterns. And to explain what I mean by that, I'm going to show you a couple of scaled down models of pants patterns that I've made. Here I have the back pattern piece for a pair of shorts, and you can see that there's a dart here in the back. And this dart is a shaping element that helps to control the fabric as we move from the circumference at the waist to the circumference at the hips. Now I've also cut out this pattern piece in fabric, and I've closed the dart just to make the point that this creates some 3D volume here, some shaping to the pattern piece, and that's the fit of the pattern. So we can customize that fit by changing the length of the dart, changing the dart intake, or even moving this dart along the top edge of the pattern piece to make sure that this volume is positioned in the right place for our bodies. Now, of course, this dart is attached to the waistband along this top edge. So if we have a stable waistband, then that means that this volume created by the dart is also in a stable location on our bodies in the right spot, and it's not going to move around too much. Now, top down, center out also says the waistband is doing something else. It's not only holding the darts, but if I simulate what would happen if I sewed two back pieces together here, notice that there is a peak that's created along the top edge of this back of the shorts. And this peak is there because there's a little bit of extra length in the center back seam. And this was something that was drafted into the pattern to create this specific fit. These shorts are fairly close fitting. So what happens when I attach this top edge to a waistband is the waistband wants to kind of even out this top edge. And it does so by pushing down on the fabric along this center back seam. And because these two edges are on a slight bias, what happens is then that the fabric is gonna kind of shift a little bit, and that downward force is going to contribute to some extra shaping along the back crotch curve. So this was new to me when I learned it, and I thought that this was a pretty cool way to think about the waistband. Not only does it hold all of those major seams in place, it also holds the shaping elements in place, and it also contributes to shaping in our pants. So the waistband is really kind of at the center of all of these different elements that contribute to fit. And so that's why it's so important in top down, center out. The second concept that I think is so important for understanding how top down, center out works is this idea to respect the design intent of the pattern drafter. What do we mean by design intent? What is it? Why should we care? So I think about design intent as all of the decisions that the designer made to create this unique 3D architecture in the pair of pants. So it's things like how much ease is there in the pants? Where is that ease distributed? What kind of shaping elements do we have in the pants? How much volume is created by those shaping elements? What's the silhouette? How does the leg hang on the body? All of these decisions are things that the designer thought about and consciously engineered into the flat pattern pieces. So they drew the lines, they drew the drafting of those flat pattern pieces to create this vision and to create this 3D architecture. So why should we respect it? I think Top Down Center Out asks us, why shouldn't we respect it? The thing that is so difficult to grasp about this concept, and the thing that was hardest for me, was that I was used to working in the traditional fitting techniques. So those techniques basically give us tools to completely erase design intent. We are redrafting parts of the pattern when we do our knock-knee adjustment or our flat seat adjustment or scooping the crotch or whatever it is. Those are redrafts of this particular pattern. And that's not to say that it's wrong or it's bad. It's just that you may end up with a pair of pants that does not resemble the original pattern and does not resemble what the designer intended. And, I think those traditional methods teach us not to care. They teach us that that's the only way to get to a great fitting pair of pants, is to redesign the draft completely. And what it reinforces is that the original draft is maybe not that important and that it's not going to work for you. Top Down Center Out advocates, what if it does? What if, with a different set of tools, that original draft can fit you, will fit you, and you just need to tweak it in different ways in order to get that pattern to fit you. So that's why we respect the design intent in Top Down Center Out, because the assumption is that the pattern will fit your body. Now, the other reason why we respect the design intent is because it has to do with letting the pattern do some of the work for us. This pattern, if it's a commercial pattern, was designed by an expert, and it was probably tested on a number of different body sizes. So this means that inherent in that draft are fitting elements, and if we redraft them, we might lose some of that. So we trust the designer, we trust the design process to create a garment that can fit lots of different body types. And if we preserve the drafting, those seam lines and the shape of the pattern, for as long as possible as we're fitting, then we are saving ourselves some work. Then we don't have to redraft. We don't have to then deal with the consequences of what happened when we did our knock-knee adjustment or our full thigh adjustment. If we respect that the pattern that we're starting from is a good pattern and will fit us, then there's less work to do, and we can get to a successful fit much faster. This concept, I acknowledge, might be one of those concepts that is difficult to truly wrap your head around until you're actually doing the method. At least that's the case for me. I did not really understand this whole trust in the design intent process until I was doing it, and then it became easier for me to see why it was important. So I encourage you to, if it doesn't quite make sense, just put a pin in this one and we'll come back to it. So hopefully this video has helped you understand some of the main concepts behind why the Top Down Center Out works and why we do what we do. I will continue to revisit some of these concepts in this video series as we move forward. In my next video, I'll be talking about everything you need to know to get started with this method, what kind of pattern to choose, what to look for in a pattern, and then what you're going to need in order to fit a pattern and get to a successful fit by the end of this. So join me next time. Thanks for watching and happy sewing.